Hello, let's continue working on the shell Codecrafters project. So I think last time I left off at missing completions. So anytime there was a command that didn't exist, then we would have to sound the bell sound every time the user pressed tab. So now we're going to move on to executable completion, which is whenever there's a partial command that matches the name of an executable in one of the path directories, we're supposed to autofill the command. We're supposed to basically autofill the command with the name of the executable. So let's give this a quick read and then start. So let's just give the stage a quick read and then start programming executable completion. In this stage, you'll extend your shell's tab completion to include external executable files in the user's path. Your shell should now be able to complete commands that are not built-ins but exist as executable files in the directories listed in the path environment variable. When the user types the beginning of an external command and presses tab, your shell should complete the command to the full executable file name. This means that if you have a command custom executable in the path and type custom and press tab, the shell should complete that to custom executable. Well, before executing your path, the tester will create an executable file named custom executable and add its directory to the path. The test will simulate the user typing the start of the external command and pressing tab. Input custom, the tester types custom and presses tab. The tester expects that the prompt line changes to custom executable, and there's a space at the end. Path can include directories that don't exist on the disk, so your code should handle such cases gracefully. Okay, so I think here we can reuse a lot of the code that we wrote for the stage that took in a command and executed the corresponding program if it existed in the path in one of the path directories. So I think we can reuse a lot of the code there. And I'm wondering if I can abstract away some of that code behind a function so that there is less repetition. So I think that is the DIY principle of programming. Do not repeat yourself. Do not, DRY, sorry. Do not repeat yourself principle. However, I think for now I'm just going to program it, and if I'm just going to program it the same way and just copy the code over, and I'll create a new function if necessary in the future. If there is a similar use case in the future. Okay, also I'm using Emacs just for fun. Just trying something out, something new out. Yeah. So I think we're supposed to make changes to the autocomplete function, which takes in partial text and returns the text that we would like to replace the partial text with. And internally, we use the readline library for this. And yeah, so as I talked about it in the previous video, I feel as though the readline library is very complicated, or I just find it difficult to understand. But I hope I get a better intuition of like how exactly it works as I continue to work on the project. Anyway, so I think my code goes here. So if it's not any of the built-ins, Then, so here's where my code should go. I need to check if it's a prefix. I can perhaps write another function. Def complete executable. So I can take prefix. There's going to be a string, and then I'm going to return a boolean. So I'm going to return a boolean because if the prefix doesn't exist, that is, if there is no program with a name of the prefix with the past prefix, then when I return false, I can sound the bell in the else branch here. So, right. So the first thing to do is, so I'm given a prefix, and I'm supposed to prefix. So I'm supposed to check it against the program names that that exist in the any of the path directories. So one way to do this would be to create a list of programs that are executable in the path directories. So I think this is, oops. Okay, so I think the buffer was killed. I think the buffer on the left side was killed when I pressed escape. Yeah, I'm new to Emacs, so I'm not sure how exactly it works. I do remember using Emacs in the past, and I could never quite develop an understanding for how buffers really work in Emacs. Buffers and window management. So I think the windows are called frames and buffers are called windows, and it's something strange. Or something on something that is not identical to the terminology used for commonly in graphical programs. Um, but yeah, it's interesting anyway. This is an interesting piece of software that I want to learn. Anyway, getting back to this, so what I can do is I can create a list of strings. I can go through each of the path directories, create a list of strings that with program names, and then compare prefix against each of the elements, and oh right, and then return the prefix name if it exists, and return the program name if the bool is true. In Go, we can actually return multiple things. We can do that in, I think we can do that in, no, I don't think we can do that in Python. But it's a lot easier to return an object. I don't think we can return multiple things in Python. Yeah, this kind of reminds me actually returning multiple things. I'm not so sure uh, if it's a great language idea because I remember working at a company where that used Go, and they returned a lot of so we had many functions methods that returned a lot of uh, arguments. Is that the right term? Returned a lot of arguments, and it often gets very unwieldy. I remember coming across a function that had 10 different things it returned. At that point, it's better to just encapsulate it within a structure, right? So I think doing something of that sort would be better. just so that we don't make the function signature too unwieldy. But yeah, yeah, actually let's just get rid of the type annotations for now. I'm just going to return actually a dictionary. Again, I'm not sure if this is the idiomatic way of doing this. But so I'm going to essentially return an executable where one of the values is the Boolean that says whether or not executable with the past prefix was found. So found, true, and right. So I think in Python, you're supposed to have, so this is going to be construed as an object. So I'm supposed to make this a string. So I know the basic key bindings in Emacs, but I'm still kind of getting used to it. I'm not sure how spaces and tabs work. For example, in VS Code, if you have a tab here, it would show you a faded out hazy visual under the tab itself, or if it's spaces, it would show you small grayed out uh, mini hyphens of sorts. But here it's just a blank screen. But yeah, I bet there's just a different way to think about this in Emacs than it is in VS Code. Completed string so. Okay. Yeah, so Emacs seems to be intelligently, according to the syntax, changing the positions of the cursor, or rather placing the cursor appropriately. Not the cursor, placing spacing appropriately, depending on the syntax itself. But I wonder why, if they've implemented that, why not just implement a complete LSP by default? It would be pretty interesting. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so let's just go through the path directories and read everything. So this is, again, I think the idiomatic way to do it. Path. Let me copy this piece of code over. So Command W. So I think option V is to go up a page in Emacs. And I could go up a page again, but it's gonna place me far away or not very close to complete executable as I'd like. So how do I do this? How do I get to that point? I think I can do Control P and kind of eyeball the number of lines. So Control G, sorry, no, it's Control U, 30, Control P. It's perfect, yes, it's Control U. Now it's going to be maybe 5, Control P. Great, okay. Yeah, in Vim, since it's a mode-based editor, you can just type the number and type K. I think eventually I'm going to switch to evil mode. But anyway, so in order to paste, I think it's Control Y. How do I indent this piece of code? So I think in VS Code, I could have done Shift Tab, and that would have indented this code. Of course, however, I would have had to select this piece of this block separately and then Shift Tab it separately from the rest. But okay, how do I indent this? Okay, I can just ask ChatGPT. To indent a piece of code. Right, so set the mark and move the pointer, use the mouse, and use indent region. Interesting. So I think meta x indent region. Hmm. So it indented this, but the for loop is still indented, not indented correctly. Um, so how do I do this? I think it's command meta this. Oops. I command meta forward backslash. I'm sorry. It's command meta backslash. That doesn't work though. You selecting the whole thing? Okay, that doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? So is it not indenting this block of code? So I think since it seems to understand Python syntax, it should be able to tell that this for loop is actually not under anything, not under any other kind of block, and so therefore it must be in the same indentation level as the previous statement. Okay, doesn't work. So do I turn on Python mode? Okay. Yeah, so I think Python is actually turned on. Yes, I think this is the mode line and this is the major mode. And this is another mode. I hope there's no syntax error here, which is causing an indentation to fail. Um, then the previous assignment statement. So it's an assignment statement further to the right, and it is not being detected by indent region. Let's hear what ChatGPT has to say about this. Because I do remember running into this issue in the past as well. Indenting it seems to be a hassle in Emacs, according to my experience. But uh, but yeah, I remember trying to look up answers for this, and I couldn't find any, but now that we have AI, I think we're all good. We're in a much better position because it lowers the barrier to advanced text editors like Emacs. Um, okay, Python mode. Okay, I think I am. Show invisible white space. What exactly is this here? Um, wait, what? Why is this colored differently than the rest of it, than the rest of the adjoining code? Well, show invisible white spaces, mixed tabs. If you see, okay, so I can convert tabs. Okay, make sure region actually includes the line you want. This is something that I have looked into. Uh, let's turn let's turn off white space mode. Okay. Okay, so now I think, oh, right. So I think now it's gonna work. Oh, that doesn't work. But why did it indent this to further to the left? There was no change initially. There must have been a change, which is why it indented this line to the left. Mm, let's see. So I don't understand what this is. Why does white space mode uh show this particular line in black and pink? Why does white space mode show two particular lines in black and pink? I hope it's able to infer the context here. Black background or dark highlight. Oh, there's normally. Oh, interesting. Tabs often. Wait, so what if I tried yeah, no, but these are spaces though. These are not tabs. I think a faded uh, dot is a. I think a faded dot is indeed is a space. Is a space. Okay, so I'm just gonna have to manually indent everything, I guess. I hope I'm able to figure out. Uh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, cool. Um, hmm. Yeah, so it seems to be indenting this properly. It seems to understand. Yeah, so when I press backspace, it seems to understand the context of the line and it seems to indent it properly, but it's unable to do so when I type indent region, which is interesting. Um, okay, if not, so I think that's option W to copy, to yank into the copy buffer. So I think yank is the Emacs term for copy. So yank is to pull something with force. So I think, oh right, so I think yank is to paste, and meta W is to, I think copying is just copying. Yank is you're yanking it from the copy buffer, from the clipboard buffer, and yanking it onto the screen in a way. And that's the reason it's control Y. Y for yank. Wow. Okay. So pressing a tab sent it all the way to the right, which means that it does understand something about the indentation context that I'm typing that I'm typing letters in, typing white space in. But yeah, I think this is a basic feature that we're supposed to, um, that Emacs is supposed to like intuitively support, I feel. But I could be approaching this the wrong way, so that's something to consider. Okay, uh, let's continue. So I've copied the code, however, I've got to make modifications to this. Um, so instead of printing out that a particular program was found, I'm supposed to instead insert it into a list. Or actually, I can just, uh, in order to save, in order to save computing resources, I can, the moment I see, the moment I see a match, I can just break out of the loop, and I can return completed. This can be false. This can be removed. So there's path.split OS path. Okay, so path contains, that's the environment variable, path separator, right. So I think I can just break instead. Files equals lister for file and files. That gives me a list of files. Is this lister? Okay. File path. As long as it's a file and it's an executable. Um, okay, great. Uh, so what I've got to do here is uh, so I've got to check the name of the file. So that's going to be so I think that's going to be file for file and files. So I've got to check whether the name of the file and against the prefix. So if in words, I think if prefix is a prefix of file, then, oops, then I can return found is true, and oops, completed x or executable equals file. So I think file dot, I assume that file is a string. File start, I think begins with. So we're supposed, we can look up Python documentation for this. Python string methods, common string operations, begins. I think it starts with, not begins with. So starts with is the red method. Yeah, so one of my biggest annoyances is that we very often get, so in search engine results, we very often get non-authoritative sources like W3 School resources and Geeks for Geeks resources instead of official Python documentation, which, I mean, to be fair though, I haven't actually looked into these documentations to see if they're any good. I'm just assuming that they're just non-authoritative and therefore bad, because very often I find the Python documentation to be, yeah, I think it's simple enough to understand, and so therefore we don't need to rely on non-authoritative sources when we can get it straight from the horse's mouth. So I don't know, it's just really annoying. Gets me every time. I think I can change this to, so starts with, for some reason, isn't mentioned here. String common operations. Oh, there we go. I think I found it. So R, S, starts with, there we go. Can be also be a tuple of prefixes to look for. Interesting, okay. So this seems to be documented under the string type and not common. I wonder what the earlier documentation was about. Anyway. Starts with prefix. Cool. I think I just omit all of this. So what I'm doing is I'm going through path, and the moment I find an executable that whose name satisfies the prefix, satisfies the path prefix, I'm returning found is true and I'm returning the file name. So one thing I should make sure of here, I think, is to close any resources that are open. I don't think I'm opening any resources here, because lister, I assume, abstracts away opening and closing file resources. And here, is file, again, it abstracts that away. os.access, I think that too abstracts the opening of the node that contains the file and freeing up resources when it returns. So I don't think I need to handle that. So if this is an executable, then, okay, so I can actually... so how do I get to the beginning of the first alphabet of the string? Emacs get to begin first alphabet in 9. Oh, meta M. Interesting. Okay, so meta M takes me to the first character in the line that I'm currently on. So let me indent this. Control meta. Awesome. So indentation does work. Indent region does work, but then it doesn't work in, yeah, I should just learn about how it works in all contexts. But otherwise, we just continue. Okay, great. So elif complete. Yeah, I feel as though this is not the best. I'm gonna have to refactor this because in the next stage, I'm gonna have to look at multiple commands that satisfy a particular prefix string. But it's okay. I'll refactor it when I get to the next stage. Complete executable text. Okay, and if I found it, so that returns a dictionary. And so if I found it, uh, hmm. Oh, then I'm gonna have to call it again. Yeah, so that's a performance penalty that I'll have to incur here. That's okay. For now, I'm gonna have to refactor it. Result equals complete. So I'm gonna return result of completed executable. And right, but now I need to think about how readline works, because this says if state is 0. So what exactly is state? So state is for a particular prefix string. State is the number of times tab has been pressed, and so the first time tab has been pressed, I think the state is 0. Yeah, so I think this is just going to be a state is 0, else none. Yeah, I don't have a good mental model for this, for the state thing. And it doesn't seem to be documented very well either. So anyways, I think this should actually work. Let's try it out. So echo obviously is going to print out echo. So I think Python. Interesting. This doesn't actually seem to return anything. So I think path does contain. Yeah. So there are folders in path. So I think it should work now. Python. So if not, if it's not a file and it's not executable, if it's not an executable file, if it's not an executable file, then continue. Oh, there we go. This is a problem. Oh, so I can just add the fix here. So if it's not an executable file or it doesn't start the prefix, so if it doesn't start with a prefix or it's not an executable file. Whoa, okay. Why am I finding it difficult to think about this? This should be relatively easy though. Um, so basically, okay, let me try to break it down. If it's not, if it doesn't start with a prefix, then I can just continue. So whatever the autocomplete text is, if it doesn't start with that, I can continue. And I should also continue if it's not that. So if both of these conditions, so in order for me to get through this, I need both of these to be true. Both of these need to be true. And so if it doesn't start with that, this is going to be, if it starts with that, this is going to be true. It's going to be false. Both of these to be false. Oh. Mm. Okay, I'm finding it difficult to reason about this, so I'm just going to break it down into different things, into different if statements. If it doesn't start, I don't even need to consider it. Good. And if it's not an executable file, then I just continue. Good. So I think the and was correct, but this is just easier for me to understand. So if it doesn't start with the prefix, then I'm just going to continue. But if it does start with the prefix, this is going to be true, and therefore this is going to be false. So we're going to go ahead. And if it's not an executable file, then I'm going to continue. But otherwise, I'm going to say, good. That should work. Python, there we go. However, I do need to add a space at the end. There we go. So it fills it up with the latest, with the first string match. So I think this should work. implement executable completion. And yeah, so now it's gonna start. So I think uh, every uh, every work session for a limited time, it boots up a virtual machine, and the first time you commit after a long time, it's the first time you push after a long time. It always takes a long time to like boot up the VM that or to boot up the environment that your code runs in. But within the same work session, the second and other the second and subsequent runs are a lot faster because the environment has already been set up. Right. So I passed this. This was an interesting stage. I was able to also learn a little bit about Emacs, which was fun. So yeah, before starting the next one, I would actually like to take a break for a while. Just take a break for 10 minutes. I just realized I was trying to use Emacs key bindings in BIM within BIM. I was pressing Control A instead of pressing 0. So 0 is to get to the beginning of the line in BIM, and Control A is the same command in Emacs. So I was trying to do 0 within, I was trying to do Control A within BIM uh, because I was just programming in Emacs. I kind of uh, I did it as a force of habit, like a transient habit of sorts. Cool. Yeah, so I think we can just start with multiple completions. I've had enough of the break. Yeah, so let's continue with multiple completions. So, like right off the bat, I think multiple completions, the intuition is for a given prefix, when you press tab, there could be multiple commands that satisfy your match, and so therefore you're supposed to display all of them. Like ideally, I would auto-complete it with the first one, and then after auto-complete it with the first possible match, and then display um, other possible matches. But I wonder what. Yeah, so I think it's very shell specific. So let's see what they uh, want us to do. Multiple completions. In this stage, you'll implement tab completion for executables, specifically when multiple executables share a common prefix. When the user types a command prefix and presses tab, your shell should identify all executables in the path that match the prefix. If there are multiple matches on the first tab press, wow, okay, there we go. Just ring a bell. So this is this is 7 in ASCII to ring a bell. Uh, On the second tab press, print all matching executables separated by 2 spaces on the next line, and follow it with a prompt on a new line. Place multiple executables starting with a common prefix into different directories in the path. Finally, it will type the common prefix and then press the tab key twice. So the first time you press tab, your shell displays the prompt with the common prefix after your shell displays the prompt after receiving the partial command. Okay, upon the first tab key press, I think this should have gone at the end. Upon the first tab key press, your shell prints the bell character. Upon the second tab key press, your shell prints the list of matching executables separated by 2 spaces on the next line, and follow it with the prompt on a new line. Yeah, this is pretty interesting. This would require me to, I think, fully understand how readline works. And I simply don't have a model for how it works now. So, yeah, so let's get started on it. So where do I start? So one of the things I could do is I could go through path and collect all the uh, executables that match the current prefix. That's one thing I can do. Um, but I shouldn't do that in all cases. I should do that only if there are multiple uh, completions. Right. So this is not a broader case of the first one. This is a separate case. This is hard. Wow. Okay. We'd expect a proficient program developer to take more than 1 hour to complete the stage. Wow. Okay. Yeah, so that makes sense It is hard. The completion should be alphabetically sorted. Okay. I'm just gonna sleep on this for a while, actually. I'm not gonna do this right away. I'm just going to do it later. I'm just gonna, what's the term for that? What's the term for like when you process something in the background because you feel better when you do that instead of like tackling it head on? I'm just gonna let it stew. I think stew is a word that could work in this context. I think I'm just gonna let it stew for a while and just process it in the background. Just think about how exactly readline works. Just take a walk and come back to this later. All right, that's it for this work session. Thank you.